Hello and welcome to Love, Dating, and Relationships. I'm your host, Julie Grimm. I'm a spiritual guide and healer within the Modern Mystery School. And today I'm so excited to have with me Caitlin Rose. Caitlin is an embodiment coach and also a Tantra yoga teacher. So welcome, Caitlin.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Yeah, and right off the bat, you're a Tantra yoga teacher. I feel like that word Tantra is so used, heavily used, but not always understood. Can you explain to us and to some of the people listening, what is that exactly?
The word Tantra it's broken down in two words. Tan is device and Tan is to expand. So basically Tantra is it's a tool, like recognizing the body as a tool for working with our consciousness. And we do practices in yoga, Tantra yoga, which is basically what you would think of, regular yoga or asana, which is the movement and breath. And in Tantra, there's also this recognizing the polarity within us all and in the world. So, the Shakti and Shiva, the masculine, feminine energy, and learning to work with those energies and transmuting that energy in order to kind of get to know ourselves deeper. So to me, it's more of a journey of self-love and alchemy. That's how I would describe it.
Yeah, because most people, when you hear the word Tantra, they just go immediately to sex.
Yes, yes. So Neo Tantra or Tantra in America, that's westernized Tantra, and the reason why that has happened is because there is uh, a scripture that has these different sexual positions that weren't from the original scriptures of Tantra. They're separate, and that's how it was adopted. There is the Karma Sutras, I think that is, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, is the book where people are kind of connecting that with. So that's kind of how Western Tantra kind of came about. So that's why people think, sex is Tantra. And sex is talked about in Tantra. It's talked about because everything in Tantra is seen as divine. There's no separation between the mundane and the spiritual. So sex is not seen as this, you know, horrible or shameful thing that some religions have identified that with. So that's why it is talked about in Tantra. So it is a part of it, but it isn't the main theme.
Yeah, and I guess when you're speaking too about balancing or working with the Shakti Shiva energies, I mean, those are sort of like the primordial sexual forces of creation, right? Like the divine masculine, the divine feminine. So maybe people get kind of wrapped up in that as an act of sex or just, focusing on the sexual aspect of that.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense too. I think just putting everything in masculine and feminine energy, people kind of connect that with sex. And, they also, we kind of also identify Tantra with divine union and relationships too, because I think of the like polarity and sexuality, because sexuality is such a powerful energy. And we associate that a lot with like love and relationships as well and sex.
Yeah, absolutely. And like what you were saying, so the primary focus of Tantra yoga is self, so alchemy of the self. But of course, that would show up in your relationships, right? If you're alchemizing some masculine, feminine polarity within you, that's going to show up outside of you as well.
Yes, yes. I think one of my favorite quotes, Osho, I think he says this, is that we're always looking for the inner man. Like if you're a woman or if you're a woman who is attracted to women, whatever it is for you, you're always looking for that outside version of yourself. And until you integrate that part of yourself, you're not going to really be satisfied with any relationship. Like it's never going to feel as fulfilling because you're subconsciously always trying to find that image, your inner man, your inner woman that's inside you. And no one's ever going to fully match that because no one's going to be us. We're all unique. We all have our unique energy. No one has the same energy. At least that's how I feel. And so I think that's also kind of connects that with relationships as well. What we think of like Tantra. Sorry, I
Yeah.
have things coming up on my screen.
When you're talking about that, so I don't know Osho that much, but I know Carl Jung.
Yeah.
He is a psychologist and he has many writings about, the psychology of lots of different topics, but he talks, and it's even, I think that's your company's name is Anima Rising. Like I've heard the animus. He describes
Yes.
like the female, and I forget which one's which now, but there's the masculine, feminine. So we have this anima inside of us, which we then project out. So as a female, mine would be the masculine, and as a man, it would be the feminine.
Yes, yes. The unconscious version of the man, what we see as man, and the unconscious woman. Yes, I actually really like. That's why I chose the name, because I feel like it connects so well with this work. So
Absolutely. And it's honestly, it's powerful to see that Tantra yoga connects with modern day psychotherapy. Like there's a huge intersection actually between the two of them. So, obviously, hugely powerful tools to transmute and alchemize those energies within yourself, but then also, to heal relationship patterns that you have. How have you seen your practice affect or influence your relationships, if at all?
ooh, hmm. So I noticed that, like, well, relationships for all of us trigger us. They bring out a lot of different things, our best and our worst. And for me, particularly, relationships have always been more difficult, probably because of past trauma. So I notice that when I enter relationships, I notice the things that come up for me. And because I'm doing this work, when you do the work, like, meaning you are willing to look within yourself, you notice that when you show up in relationships and the things that come up, you either have to integrate that or you can choose to continue that way. And I noticed that, like, the more these things come up for me, the more opportunity I have to integrate these things. So, like, maybe, like, let's say you struggle with, you're insecure in relationships, and you may have a partner that may bring that up for you. And if you are someone that is looking to work on yourself and do, like, alchemy, inner alchemy, you have an opportunity to see that and integrate it and really focus yourself back to you and not look so much on the outside. It's not like it's pretty much self-development, I would say, at the end of the day. It has helped me more with that, because that's
Yeah.
basically what it is.
And that goes back to what the Carl Jung piece, right? At least from what I've read, like the anima is a projection. And so,
Mhm.
as far as it's unconscious, you are always projecting outward. So, like in your example, if you suffer with insecurity, which is, I have total anxious attachment, that's like 100% an issue that I've struggled with. But to the extent that I'm unconscious of it, I'll always be projecting outwards. Oh, he's so unavailable. Oh, he's so avoidant, or whatever it might be,
Mhm.
which might be true of them, but to the extent that I'm not, like you said, owning that, or willing to look within to see, well, what within me is kind of creating that, I'm not really empowered in my relationship and my healing.
Right, yeah. I resonate that as well. I have anxious and avoidant attachment styles, so I can go either way, but I definitely resonate with the anxiousness for sure. And I also find that, like, when you don't have a healthy relationship with the inner masculine, if you're a woman, like in my case, not having a healthy relationship or view of the masculine within myself and in my experiences, I kind of have this projection with the men that I'm involved with, thinking, like, no matter what they do, it's not enough, meaning, like, something wasn't fulfilled within me, like with my relationship with the masculine in my life. So I am struggling to kind of find that. But until I find that and feel that within myself, I feel like every other masculine or energy, any romantic relationship with that energy isn't going to be, it's going to be triggering, because it's causing me to reflect back on something that hasn't been resolved.
That's huge. It's so powerful that Tantra yoga is that tool that is supporting you in that practice. That's huge. Huge.
Yeah, yeah, it's been really helpful. I think, when people look at it from that point of view, they find that it can relate to a lot of spiritual practices, and it's so much more than the intimacy part.
And so when you're doing this self work and you're dating or you have partners, how does that influence like the type of partner that you choose? Do you want to find a partner who's also into Tantra yoga? Do you want to find a partner who has the same spiritual beliefs and ideas that you have? How important is that for you?
I think when I was younger, it was really important, but as I get older, I think what's more important to me is someone that's open to growth and self-development more than anything, because I think I like challenges in a way with relationships, not challenges that are toxic, but meaning like if I'm an idealist, I feel like I'd be better with someone who's more practical, or if, you know what I mean? I like that exchange because I feel like having those types of dynamics help me grow, which is the most important to me. But I wouldn't do well,
The
I think, with,
polarity. You're
yes, I like
seeking
the
out the
polarity.
polarity. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
But I,
that's where the passion is, right? That's where
yeah.
energy can flow from the poles. If there's no polarity and we're all just the same, it's stagnant, nothing's moving.
Right. Yeah. And I think when I was, younger, or and sometimes in some ways I fall into this trap where I want to find someone just like me. I want to find, I don't feel that way so much anymore, but I feel like at some point in our lives we have this idea, we romanticize like finding our, soulmates, and like this idea of finding a perfect match, which doesn't really exist. I don't feel so anymore. I don't know, maybe it's just a personal belief, but I think the if people are different, like you said, the passion, there's more passion there.
And maybe that differences or the opposites, the polarity in a way could become the perfect match. But I hear you when you say
Right.
there's no one. I also have come to the space in my life, and maybe it will change, where I don't believe that there's just one any longer. But I do see it again, if you want to think about it energetically, that each of us is holding like a certain resonance. Or as you said, like we have our own inner masculine energy that we're kind of consciously or unconsciously searching for to find
Hmm.
that frequency match. And I do think that there is an element there, that it's not that every person on the street is going to be an energy match for that frequency. But also, like you were saying, I want somebody open to growth, because I might change. I mean, in fact, I will change. I'm going to change. And so that energy match will also probably change over time. And I hear you. I would love to find somebody who is open to change with me.
Yeah, I think that's one of the important things in relationships is open to growth for yourself, but also for your partner, because no one's going to stay the same. And if they do stay the same, most likely the other person isn't. No two people stay the same. So I think that's really important. And one thing I like about the practice of Tantra is it talks about how ordinary lovers can become soulmates, meaning it's an alchemy, it's an alchemical process. So like if you do energy work with you and your partner, if you're willing to have those deep, meaningful conversations, you can have a soulmate relationship, meaning a deep relationship, being in tune to each other. I think sometimes that can come more naturally, like you said, like some people just have that frequency and you can click with them. But I think anybody, if they wanted to, can create that. But I do think, yeah, sexual energy can also be worked with as well. But it really depends, but that's what I like about it. It's just the idea that anyone can have that.
I did not know that. That is so, like, that's so interesting to me and so fascinating, because I do see, like in India, for example, they had arranged marriages for a long, long time, where I
Hmm.
think that the foundation of marriage was you can cultivate love, you can cultivate compatibility, you can cultivate a match, like you said, versus like the Western idealism or the fairy tale stories that we've sort of been sold is like, no, your match exists and you meet your match, and either you're a match or you're not, versus like this idea that you can put in the work to create the intimacy, even if it's not there to start.
Right. Yeah. And I believe that is true because when we think of ourselves, like if we can do the work on ourselves and we can change and transform and have a beautiful relationships with ourselves, we could definitely have that with another person. So,
I love that.
uh,
I mean, really what it takes at that point is willingness, like
right.
desire on both parties and willingness which not everybody has, but if it exists, if the willingness exists, that's actually, um, that's kind of very liberating. For me, it seems like a liberating perspective, because it's no longer about, oh, everything needs to align perfectly. It's like, no, two people meet and there's a willingness, there's a desire to alchemize, to explore, to open, or maybe it's like going back even to the definition of Tantra, like to expand.
Right. Yeah. Yes. I love that. And I feel like when we are free, like we feel free, like we don't feel chained to our traumas and our insecurities, and we get to choose a partner based on free will versus like we are made for this person, we have to be with this person. I feel like that's in a sense more beautiful because it's just we choose somebody versus like this idea of fate, which a fate is beautiful too, but I think it puts a lot of pressure. It can that mindset can ruin something that you have because you think it's not meant to be, and it can cause a
Yeah.
lot of friction.
Oh my gosh, it can cause so much damage on either side. Either, like I've seen even within myself, that for whatever reason, I've been like, this person's my soulmate, they're who I'm meant to be with. And then if it doesn't pan out, that's like catastrophic, because then what are you going to do? That was your person. Or on the other hand, you could be with a person who's really lovely and wonderful, but there might be some part of you that's always kind of like, this isn't it, it's not my person, it can't work because it's because of XYZ story. Versus from this perspective, it's like, well, no, actually, if the desire is there from both parties to choose, then that's enough in a sense. Or that's not necessarily enough, because it's not always easy to keep choosing. We make different choices, time goes on, we change, we change directions, but that's like a very fertile starting point for something.
Right. I came across an article one time about like how important is compatibility, and I do think it's important. I'm not saying it's not important at all, but this couple, they weren't compatible, meaning they liked different things, they didn't like the same foods, but they accepted the person for who they were, and that's how they were able to last so long. So I think like when you accept someone for who they are and you're willing to not try to change a person, it can work even if you're not 100% compatible.
So when you are dating or in partnership, and you meet somebody who's really different from you, I mean, it sounds like that's actually maybe what you're attracted to, or like what draws you in. But what kinds of challenges would people find? Let's say, this is a show for spiritual women, they're looking for their partner. Or maybe they're already in a relationship, but that person doesn't share the same spiritual perspective or spiritual views. They're not going to go to the Tantra yoga class with them.
Mm.
Maybe they're not into astrology, they're not into the crystals. Like, what sorts of challenges might that person meet, and how can they move through those challenges?
Hmm. So I think it really depends on the couple because, I have dated someone that grew up Christian and they were very against tarot cards, astrology. And as someone that has always been interested in that, that does cause, a huge incompatibility because if one person is very really passionate about their religion, and then it's a misalignment to the other person, I think that's when it becomes a problem. But if one person doesn't really have such a strong opinion on it, like maybe they won't go to the Tantra yoga class with you, maybe they won't meditate with you, but they don't stop you from doing your thing, I think that's okay. I don't think the person needs to 100% be on board with every spiritual practice that you do. Maybe they don't practice that with you, but maybe they're willing to on a retreat with you. Maybe they're open to other things like trying psychedelics with you. It doesn't have to be exactly crystals and deep like intimacy practices, which I think is okay. But if someone is so against what you're doing, where they're making fun of it, where making fun of it in a way where it's actually abusive, there's a difference between joking around and then being toxic, and then they don't hold the space for you to be yourself. I think that's when it becomes an issue.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I can relate a lot to that. So, like on dating sites or whatever, you can actually list if you're spiritual, agnostic, atheist, religious. And for a period of time, I was always ignoring people who said that they were atheist because I've met certain atheist people who are very against spirituality. They're against kind of the work that I do. They're really not open to energy healing, but not just not open, it's to the point where there's like a negative. And I found out, okay, we're really incompatible. But at a certain point, I started to say, you know what, that was that interaction. Let me like open up and see. And I started to match with people who said that they're atheist. And I was like, are you? And the first thing that they asked me is, oh my gosh, tell me about astral projection or something like that. And I'm like, well, you don't really sound atheist to me. So there's ways that we can put ourselves in boxes or label ourselves that aren't really, it's not an accurate picture, right? It's like we're using a word to try and explain our belief systems, but it's not always accurate. And so, yeah, there's a difference between somebody who's like, okay, well, I don't do that, but I have no issue with you doing that. And in fact, there might be even a little curiosity on my part versus, no, that's wrong. That's not okay. Absolutely never. So there's sort of like nuance within how people respond to spirituality or to those more like
mhm.
those other practices like the tarot and whatnot.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I feel like as women, we need to be careful too with trying to find a spiritual partner because just because someone's spiritual doesn't, as you know, I'm sure you've experienced with men who may pose to be spiritual, but there's a lot of toxicity in every community.
What do you
And
mean? What do you mean? If they say that they're spiritual, uh,
they
a
must be a good person.
they must be amazing and fully healed. I mean, because I know I came to spirituality fully healed. Absolutely not. Yeah, 100%. I say about that, all that glitters is not gold.
Yeah.
All that glitters is not gold. In fact, I had a woman on this show a while back now who helps people meet their soulmate. And she was telling her own story about how, in a way, maybe similar to what we were talking about, the anima, how we project our ideal man. So she had this idea of like her ideal man. Well, her guy was going to be so spiritual. He was going to have like written books, traveled the world, have done all these things. And then it ended up being he's a detective who lives around the corner from her, who's like not against spirituality and has his own sort of relationship with it, but on the other hand he hasn't written books about it or something like that. And so I think there's this way that we can absolutely trip ourselves up if we're looking for all these boxes to be checked versus looking at the person themselves and really what they bring to the table.
Right. Yeah, I love that. I love that. I think that's so I've done that myself. Like, and I think my image of a man, yeah, like I think for a lot of us, it's usually tied to our early experiences with our parents. And if you've had maybe a negative experience as well, you could be drawn to those characteristics. Like if you don't have like a healthy idea, like you think you may know what you want, but maybe that what you want isn't necessarily what you need. So like maybe this person, maybe she needed someone that wasn't like what she thought she wanted. Maybe it was more like you said, like that those differences created that polarity and that connection.
Yeah, and kind of what you were saying too about the expansion through Tantra, the expansion through relationships and all the alchemy that goes on. I mean, so often we are given what we need and not what we think we want,
Yeah.
is what actually allows for that growth and allows for that transformation. And yeah, sometimes through like tension or discomfort
Mm-hmm.
and
Yes.
changes. But as you said too, we don't want to get trapped in thinking that toxicity is the same as challenge or discomfort.
Right. Yeah. Because I think and what is the term? Oh, this person is my mirror, or this person's teaching me. Like having that mindset can be actually dangerous because if you're in a relationship where the person's causing you a lot of pain, sure you could be learning, but like I don't think relationships are supposed to be so painful. I think people have started to have this idea that like, these deep spiritual relationships are supposed to trigger us so much, but like there's a fine line between abuse and just you having to deal with your traumas. So I think that having that mindset could be a little dangerous, but as long as that person is grounded, then it's okay.
Yeah, and staying present with, what percentage of the time am I in suffering versus joy, and the trade-off and the balance between those two experiences.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, it's been so lovely to have you. Thank you so much for sharing more. I'm actually now super curious about Tantra yoga. I might have to go find you and your teaching.
It was great having to be on here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and take care. If you want to read more about Caitlin, her bio's below, and you can click any links to read more about her. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you.